Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts with the drill guru, Joe Huls. How are you, Joe?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So everybody, we are going to give you so much helpful information about how to do the visual planning for your show. You need to have a great visual show and you need to plan it. And Joe, most people do not do very much or enough planning and research and getting ready, right? So this is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think there's going to be something for everybody tonight talking about some of these things. I wrote down some bullet points and sent them to you. And at the end, I thought to myself, maybe some of this might seem maybe a little bit basic or knowledge that some people know already. But I think it's really helpful for everyone to hear. Literally, the lengths that some people go in planning their show, because I have, so many clients with drill writing, and there are some people that provide me literally nothing when it comes to the visual side of their program. They only provide me their band numbers, their music, and that's it. And so,
and then they complain, right?
To create that. So,
and
then we're going to go through some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, everybody, whether you are that drill writer who's going to open up Pyware and then stare at a blank screen and be terrified, no, we're going to tell you how not to do that. Or if you're the band director with his team or his or her team, and you're starting to plan it out and you're not sure what's the best way to map it out, plan it out, and be able to give that information to your drill writer, we're going to talk about that. So it's going to be very practical stuff. And we're probably going to say a lot of stuff that you know. But I got to tell you, Joe, as you just said, some people just sort of don't put in the effort and the time and the planning, and it really makes a difference. We all know when you sit at a show and you're watching them, and you can tell, man, somebody spent a lot of time thinking about this and planning this and mapping this out.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll also have a little bit tonight too for any drill writers that are tuning in too, because I'll open up Pyware here in a little bit, and we'll look at some ways to take some of those ideas that your clients, or if you're a band director, that you have, and work together with your drill writer to use Pyware to help envision what it is that you want to take and put onto the field. So yeah, it's one of those things where, band directors, sometimes I was a band director for 14 years, and there was some things about, having a visual designer or a drill designer. And I just thought, well, I don't want to step on their toes. I want to let them have, their interpretation of what we're doing. But as a drill writer, I loved all these notes. I wanted as many notes, as many pictures, as many inspirations as you could possibly give me as a drill writer for every moment in the show. It didn't hinder my creativity as a designer. I love seeing it. And some of the things we're going to talk about tonight will help, hopefully, all who are tuning in, band director, drill designer, color guard person, whoever it is that's helping put this show together. It'll hopefully give you that inspiration for next fall.
Absolutely. And here's two things, everybody, I'm going to say, and then I'm going to get out of the way. Number one, if you are that band director or guard person or drill person at a school, give them all that information, but then know that they're going to make it work as best they can. They cannot give you everything. I'm sure you're going to say this. They cannot give you every single thing you want, but give them all the ideas. Give your drill person, your visual designer, everything, every idea you have, knowing that a lot of it will end up in the show, and then trust that professional to make the right decisions about what can happen when and how to make it work. The other thing I want to say is, if you're watching live right now, thank you so much. You're awesome. We would love for you to be a part of this conversation. So there is a comment section where you can type in any comments or questions. So if Joe is explaining something and you're like, wait, I didn't understand what you meant, or can you tell me more about such and such, type it in. Or if you came with a question, type that in too. So Joe, I'm going to get out of the way and let you start. What do you want to start? What's the first thing you want to say?
Yeah. So when I was putting some of this stuff together, I thought, I'll try to put things together kind of logically in order. So this is kind of assuming that you have your theme, and your music picked out, even if you have it arranged or you pre-bought something or that type of thing. But this is assuming you have a good idea of what you want your band to play. So I think the first thing visually is not to start thinking about drill and not to start thinking about moves and rotations and this type of thing and getting into, the real details. The very first thing you need to think about is your aesthetic. And that is your colors, your flags, your props, whatever it is to help set the stage or the mood of the show. And it's important to get that feeling and that mood and that aesthetic put onto paper if you've got a lot of props, or if you have any bits of media that are going to go along with your presentation, that you kind of find those things first. And I've seen people do this in many different ways. I don't have the exact example tonight, but I did work with a program coordinator for a band that I write for, and they do a Pinterest board, which has just clips and photos and anything to do with the color scheme that has to do with the show. And that helps those color guard folks to pick out those fabrics for the silks or for the costuming. And any graphic designers, or if you're the graphic designer, for your program, for what kind of prop flats you might have or how you set the stage up front. I'll show you kind of an example. And once you see kind of all of this aesthetic kind of get put onto the field, it can really help your drill designer understand where the show is coming from. So I'm going to present something real quick. I'll share my screen, entire screen. So it's ready to go there, Tim, if you want to share that. Now, this is a show that I wrote last year for a band in Ohio that I tend to do a couple things here with my files, especially if bands have an aesthetic, of course. But beforehand, I usually make the stadium for the band, just so that when they see when I write for a band, they can see what their show will look like with their fields. This band had a big baby blue F in the middle of the field, so that kind of helped set the stage. Whether it matters or not, it was helpful to them to see what it would look like on their field. And this band also had a limited practice field, so you can see along the edges here, I blacked out where I couldn't chart drill. That way I didn't accidentally go outside the boundaries. But of course, we're talking more about the aesthetic. So as the band was planning their show, we talked about what we wanted the props to look like and the prop fronts and flats to look like. And they sent me their images, and I was able to send them 5 or 6 different versions of the props with these eyes that were separated. We did them as separated. We pushed them together. We kind of moved them. We did an off-center look. We did a side 2 off-center look. We just had a lot of different feel to the field and the prop setup, and that really helped me to see and them to see how exactly they wanted to do it. Of course, they picked this look, which was much more of a symmetrical look, symmetrical weighting. And then, of course, it was really easy for me to get into the drill. I'm just kind of scrubbing through the drill here and put that all together, once we get into the planning of things. But it was nice to know the feeling and the mood that is being created on the field. Another one I'll show you is this one. Hopefully my Pyware doesn't freeze up. And this was a band that had, this was a baseball show. And so they had several different props and tarps on the field and that sort of thing. And so by me coming up with the aesthetic and how things are organized on the field and sending it back and forth a few times, we were able to really come up with the best possible scenario for the kiddos here to and the designers and color guard designers to give them a really good idea of how the show is going to flow, how it's going to look, and how we can set the stage to make the visual program very successful. Let me take it off present there. So it's important, I think, to think through those things, not make those things that are on the back end where we write drill, we get into some of the details, and then we go, oh, well, we got to have these props, and somebody will print them. And no, that stuff's important. That stuff is an important factor for how the show feels, how it looks, how it's going to be set up on the field. I can't hear you, Tim.
Sorry, I was muted, everybody. No, I love what you're talking about, and I love two things. First off, this used to be, and everybody, I've been around a long time, everybody. I'm an old dog in this. And like, this used to be the way it was you figured out your music and you kind of picked your color. And then later on, you figured out this is not the way it works anymore, everybody. You have to plan up front, just like you have to figure out your soundscape with your music choices and plan it from the beginning. It can no longer be added later. Same here. If you want to do this right and you want to be successful and you want to give your kids the best experience and your audience the most effect, that's the way to do it. The second thing I want to say is I love that you're letting everybody contribute, like create a Pinterest board, create a document. I had a band I just worked with, and all the students in the band added ideas and pictures and voted on their favorite whatever to help us decide what to include visually in the show. And they all got involved and contributed and put pictures in. And I thought, man, get everybody excited about the show as soon as you can and get them talking.
Yeah, totally. It really does help when you're trying to, number one, generate interest, especially for band directors. A big thing now too is doing your reveal video and this type of thing. Just some media put together with some of the music you're going to do to get your kids excited, to help recruit maybe a little bit at the end of the year for the upcoming season and that sort of thing. But it really will help, especially these outside people like us who aren't in the band room every day, aren't around the kids. We just get the emails and the occasional phone calls from the directors. But when I can watch that video and I can see kind of what you're thinking, it really puts me in the right mindset for what to design on the field.
Yeah, just more information. I've ended up on a lot of reveal videos these days where I'm sort of like, hey, I'm writing your music or whatever. So anyway, let's move on. What's next?
So, of course, once you've gotten all of that, all those music arrangements in, you've got the music, you've got the scores, you've got all that stuff. The number one thing that your drill designer will do is they will create a count sheet. Now, this is so important for even band directors to do. When you've got your music, don't necessarily just think about it in terms of measures and phrases. Go ahead and write down a count sheet. How many moves you have, how many holds you want, where are the spots that you want to have, definite halted positions, where you don't want anybody moving. Maybe the music is challenging, or you just would rather do choreography to have, tell the visual story, that type of thing. But go through it and create a count sheet first. And then just think about your aesthetic, like have already figured out, and your prop setup. And just think through from beginning to end where those moments are going to be, where you want to, if you have a moving props, if you have something like that, do you have enough steps? Are there enough counts to move the things that you want to move? Or do you have enough counts to get your color guard members to a place to drop equipment off, grab some more equipment, and come out? Are there actual, enough left and rights to do that? And if there isn't, then either choose to do something different or add some music. Or if it's too much, take some away. It's important to make the count sheet. And as a designer, I get the count sheet sometimes from band directors. And sometimes I modify it just a little bit if it fits a little bit better for a certain idea. But in most cases, I don't ever receive any sort of count sheet, even though it's kind of my job to do it, which is fine. But but for the planning part of it, you don't want to get to your drill designer creating drill, and then they realize that there's not going to be enough counts to pull off what you're trying to do. I'll show you some examples. Let's see if I can open this up. I had a group last year that we got into their program and found that we wanted the props to move off of the field at some point. They had a lot of chairs, so they had tons of chairs on the field, like 64 chairs or something like that. And we got halfway through the opener and realized we just don't have enough counts to get these things off the field.
Right. This is another example of having to plan this out up ahead, right? So like if you have to figure out your props or your set pieces or whatever you want to call these things that might move around. Gosh, especially if they move around, Joe. You need to do that early, because I got to tell you, as a music arranger, I've got to leave space in the music for this too. Because if the low brass is all schlepping flats across the field, I can't write them in. So it needs to be planned. Again, we're beating that dead horse. It has to be planned up front. And Joe, I like the idea of maybe the count sheet is interactive, like you map it out and then you share it with them and then they talk about it and etc. You have an example. There's an example. There it is.
Yeah, so we had this great, all this great stuff going on where the woodwinds are over here and they're playing, they have the chairs, and then the brass are kind of on side two and they have the chairs back here. So there's, chairs everywhere. People were interacting with them, going up on them, coming down off of them, and it was great. But we got, I was probably to about this point into the program, about 25 pages in, and we got most of them off, but side two didn't really have enough counts. The drum line was in place, the rifles are ready to go, and we just needed some more music. But thankfully, we squashed that all way ahead of time. And I said in the planning process, and said, look, if you want the low brass to play that feature with chairs on the field, we're going to need much more drum line in order to work out getting those things off the field. And thus we added a little bit more of a drum break, and then everything came back out and all was good to the end. But that was certainly one of those moments, I think, where the planning part and the planning stages and creating that count sheet really came together. The band director at this school at Hudsonville is so organized. And when we made that up, we looked at it, we just looked at the physical steps, and we knocked that one down right away and got it exactly the way we needed it, which was good. I've got one other example, hopefully, if my Pyware doesn't freeze up.
By the way, everybody, while he's changing shows, if you're using chairs, Joe, whenever I like chairs on the field, I think they're awesome, but gosh, that's a headache to mark that drill down, write the drill. But anyway, I always have the same person move their chair the whole time. I personally would never write a show where like the guard moves chairs over here and then the winds move chairs over here. No, that's a nightmare. Like I always say, whoever's going to move that thing, they always move that thing. We're not Santa Clara. We're not that organized. We don't have all summer. You know what I mean? So either the guard or the winds are going to move these props. That's the way I always do it. Anyway, moving ahead.
Yes.
Another example?
Well, and I do. My Pyware crashed, so I'm opening it back up again. And in those planning stages, like we're talking about now, that's where moving props in any category, whether it's just even a chair or anytime you have an individual that has to move something, you just need to think through when this student is absent from rehearsal, can we even do the show?
Right. You have to have a backup plan.
Can we only do the show if everybody's here? I remember my teaching experience. We had a show with a lot of moving props, and we would have kids absent, and it would turn into the staff's job to run out there and just kind of move things just to make the show work. And so, my 2 cents on moving props is, it just needs to be worth it. And are you at a place with your kids and attendance and all of that, to come up with a game plan for when the students aren't there, because
Right.
it can turn into the bane of your existence if it's not.
Right. And by the way, if you've never had set pieces that move around the field before, then the first year you just get set pieces that don't move. And then the next year you get set pieces and they move maybe once, maybe twice. You have to build up to it. And the other thing I would say, Joe, is whenever I'm charting drill that has this kind of stuff happening, is I always try to chart an extra person. So if it takes 2 people to move something, there's 3 there. And maybe that person's just walking along in the back. I don't care. But that way, if Susie's absent, Johnny can step in. Okay, we have another example. Here we go.
Right. So this was a group that I did that had a lot of moving. They had a lot of moving stages. These 4 stages here, and then they had a bunch of other stuff in the back that also moved. And so we really had to work out who was going to be the focus while these things all come together, and whether or not there was going to be enough, counts to make all of those things happen, similar to the previous example I just showed, but mainly also just to see what the physical size of all of this looks like when it was put together. So we tried to make everything to scale. They had this big kind of rock stage and rock band type look and feel to the show. And it was really cool. Probably before we even got the drill on the field, I would just write just the props coming together. And so I could hide everyone. And when I charted it, I just, even before I charted it, I did this, and I just hid all of the performers, and we could just look and watch to see how these things come together. And I could show them, what it would be like to reassemble all this stuff. So, these type of logistical things are really, really important to think through and to put together before you even get to the drill writing stage.
Because when you create your prototype set piece, somebody needs to take it out to a field and see how does it move? How much time does it take?
Right.
Oh, it takes 5 people, not 3. Like you have to figure. I love everybody. We're making this point. You have to figure this out all in advance. And I love that you're having this interaction, this conversation. You're creating the count sheet. You're figuring out with the team at the school. You're having these conversations. It's not like everybody. You just sort of come up with the stuff, throw it to the drill writer, and it's done. It's not the way it works anymore. Not for great shows.
Yeah. And that's kind of brings me to my next one, which is talking a little bit about this storyboard that we we're just talking about. This is an example. I've got one up there if you want to pull it up, of a storyboard that I used last year for a show. And like I said, the counts is kind of the most important part, measures and counts. And then usually I'll do a little description of what's happening in those bars. So the front ensemble's playing, or in this case, the saxophone is playing. And then, here's a full impact, kind of these types of descriptors, just so that it's all there. But then I also have, and this is shared with the whole staff, a couple other ones. Visual, what should we be seeing? What type of motion? What type of forms? What do you think we should be doing in terms of motion on the field? A whole one just for guard. And so this would be any information related to the color guard, 10 rifles, the rest are on flag. I've even had people, clients put in here, G1, 4, 7, and 8, or like they already know, especially if it's in later movements, maybe not in the first movement, but they tell me exactly who's going to be in for other things. So like part 2 is here at the bottom, and then they could add some more stuff to it and add some more things. There's part 3, but another one that I have in here is a column for how does it feel? How does the show feel? What are we trying to create here with this moment? And in all those moments, you have that feeling of, what are we supposed to get from this moment? And it's really, really just kind of an important column to have there, so that your designer, your drill designer, has the right idea about how far you want to go with this moment. Because sometimes, as a drill designer, I've met with my clients, I know the level of the kids and that sort of thing. But if they put into that column, how does it feel? And they put, I want this to be the best drill sequence we've ever done. Or this is going to be really going to be a great chance for our rifles to show off what they can do. Then I know that this moment needs to be created by a drill move. This moment needs to be created by a rifle toss. This moment needs to be created by a drumline choreo thing. This needs, this little column of how does it feel? How does each moment feel really helps me to understand exactly who should be prominently displayed. And of course, I always have an other notes thing. And this kind of helps me, for me, as I go through. A lot of times I'll put soloists who need to come off, or I'll start saying, start transitioning off flags, bring T1 off to the front for the solo. And it's just things that remind me of what to do. But this is usually shared with everyone on the staff. So it's shared with all the people that help teach. It's all the folks that are there, that are on the field, that are out there in the heat, and we all have this combined idea of the moment that we're trying to make within the show. So these storyboards can work wonders for your program to make sure that you get the tailored product that you're looking for as a director. And I alluded to this earlier, or talked about it earlier. I would say the majority of the bands that I write for don't do any of this. They don't send me any of these storyboards. I probably get half of the bands that I write for do it, and the rest just send me the music and the scores and the instrumentation and say, go for it. And that's okay. But it does leave the entire visual, product in my lap, and it will be what I think it should be. So again, it's really important when you're planning visually for your program to have a say in what you want your program to look like, because then you know that it will be right for your kids.
Yeah, it needs to be a conversation. So if somebody doesn't create this count sheet and then the storyboard, you create them. Do you share them with them after that? Or do you try to get input from them after you've sort of mapped it out? Or do you just do your thing?
Well, it depends on the client. But what I do is I first make my count sheet. And then if I have any info, if I have a storyboard, I have that open, of course, while I'm writing. And that really helps me. If I haven't been given any of that information, then yes, I create that for myself. I write down the counts, the measures, and then I put my own little things in to remember as I go. And then usually what I'll do is I will send an email to the director. Hey, I'm starting on movement 2 tomorrow, and here's what I'm planning to do. I'm going to, it looks like it's going to be around 10 sets. I'm going to have these flags come off to get this and come out, and then we're going to have this. They're going to hold here, and they're going to move a little bit more, and then hold for the rest of it. And you can add some choreography to the hold. Does this all sound good? Send the email, and then hopefully I'll get a response, and they'll say, yeah, that sounds great, or no, I didn't want to hold there, or they'll give me some more information. But for the most part, I'll have the spreadsheet is mainly for me. Sometimes I don't put it all in a digital way. I do it in my planner. So I have my own planner where I just like to do it because I can write faster than I can type. And also in the planner too, I have like thumbnails and little things that I can write down. And I'll see if I can find a page where this is a new one. So
and in my count sheet and stuff, I'm always drawing a lot of pictures.
Yeah, so I got like lots of pictures in there. And I got my count sheet kind of along the side. And then, I'll go through, or even just do like an entire movement, but on one page of drill. So I'll just like do arrows and all kinds of other kooky stuff. And it looks terrible to anybody looking at it, but to me, it all makes sense, and then that way I can come up with that synopsized version of what I want that movement to look like. And then I can send it to them and they can come back and say, that will or will not work and change it in whatever way possible. But, just the basic stuff about the spreadsheet is so important. Where are you going to hold? Who's the featured soloist? Who's the featured groupings? Can they move a little bit, or do you must they hold? Working out the standstill moments is important. Coming up with dense forms versus curvilinear, color guard integrated versus color guard framing, symmetrical versus asymmetrical drill, all of this stuff that can be put into that storyboard really will help the director and the drill designer to work together to get what they really, really want.
Yeah, and if by chance there's any drill designers watching tonight who are not familiar with this process, this is something I absolutely think you need to adapt and start using, because my job, I feel like, Joe, when I'm writing drill, is just to keep track of the right people, right? Because if I have that, T1 is a trumpet soloist and that person has got to be in a certain spot at a certain time, that takes planning to way ahead to make that happen. And certainly with color guard, I feel like I'm especially keeping track of key performers who should be the soloist or the one in the front of the wedge or whatever. That is my job. That takes a lot of effort, and I have to write a lot of notes. And I do draw a lot of pictures like something like this. I want to make one other point. I hope I'm not jumping ahead to something you're planning to talk about, but you've said the word moment a lot. Are you going to talk about that, or should I say something now?
Like, what is a moment?
No, except that, well, here's the thing. I feel like now shows are designed as in moments, and that you make the moments happen. And it's interesting because I'm about to share on the Marching Roundtable podcast a whole series of conversations that I have with Scott Chandler about how he designs and does coordination and figures out the shows for the Blue Devils, of course, wildly successful, and all the other groups that he's worked with, Winter Guards and corps in Japan and the whole thing. So he shares a lot of information, but over and over in that information, he talks about how, really we're just creating moments now. And so that's what you're talking about is we all know that shows have these moments, right? But the way they're created has greater variety now than it used to. Sometimes you're all run over here instead of marching over here, or there's a guard thing or a drum thing. There's all these moments. So as you're storyboarding this out and you're mapping it out and you're setting your count sheet and you're making your plan, you're really going from moment to moment. And I think this is sort of what you were saying earlier, at least that's the way I think about it, is I want to make sure that the staff and the band director and I all sort of agree on what the key moments are and then what they might be. Is this a big dramatic moment and the guard is featured? Is it a swing flag moment? Is it a drill moment? Is it, I feel like defining the moment, and then it's easy for me to write drill, Joe, because I'm really just writing toward the next moment, trying to make that transition look beautiful. But if I have these markers, these lighthouses all throughout, it's so easy to write.
Right. Yeah. I won't pretend to know as much as the amazing Scott Chandler. I'm not anywhere near on that level, but he is right. If you can, in your plan, when you're planning for your production, you can listen to that music and you can think, okay, this sounds like this moving into this, and then this moment is created by, and then you have to go ahead and make a decision. And that's when your staff gets involved and you say, well, is this going to be a toss moment? Is this a characterized moment? Is this where the characters meet? Or is this a story moment? Do we have a moment here that we're telling a story in the show? Or is this a prop moment? Is this where the lights come on or the thing turns around? Because effect can be created by more than just kids hitting their dots. It's really important also to have a variety of moments in your show so that you're not always creating the same type of effect, because then it kind of gets lost. If every time it's ripple to here with one color guard person tossing, if it's that over and over again, that can become old by the end of the show. So you want to have a variety of moments, and plan out things like level changes and some choreography, or a moment where everyone goes to the ground, or just all of these things that will provide variety in your show will give you the most amount of success. And if we're not thinking through that and sharing that, then all your drill designer has to go off of is, well, I'm just going to make these kids move around the field. And that's really it, and we don't think that maybe there's that extra level of depth. Usually when I get a band that has those open class or world class skills, I am usually dealing with a higher level of planning. And that's where these big storyboards come into play and that sort of thing. But I think it's good for everybody. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. It doesn't matter what your competitive level is. If you just do Friday football games, or you're out every Saturday 9 to 9, I mean, it's important to put all this stuff down, because there's a lot of energy and effort going into the season, and we should, do our best to try to make it as successful as possible.
Yeah, our goal is to set those kids up for success. And Joe, it's always so frustrating to me or disappointing for me when you watch a show and the kids are working really, really hard at stuff that doesn't bring them those effect points, or they're not having moments that
Right.
are meaningful or effective. And so we're not setting those kids up for success, and they're working really hard, but they're not getting back from it what they could. So this is what we're talking about, everybody. Plan, figure out your moments, have lots of conversations, do lots of research. If you're watching and you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. Joe, where are we headed next?
Well, I put something in here. This is a little bit for the drill designers that are out there, but I think it could be applicable for anyone really that's working on a show for next year. I worked with a guy when I was in Cobb County. I worked for Bo Sodders, who's a fantastic band director. He's now at Pope High School in Cobb County. And he would have notebooks of drill sets and forms, and he would literally map out the show, just rough sketches, not any details, but he would provide that to his drill writer about what he was thinking, the angle at which he wanted this to come out, or this thing to happen, or this turnaround to happen. And he kind of planned moments on paper, and kind of, help guide his drill writer to making those moments happen. And so actually charting or drawing pictures of things, especially hold sets, big important sets in the show, moments like, say in your lyrical ballad, in your, middle section of the show, maybe, where you really want a maximum amount of effect during a really pretty musical moment. It's okay to make a sketch, do a thing either on the, on the drill pad, or, just even if you just draw a picture on a piece of paper, or take a picture of it and email it to your drill writer. It's okay to do sets ahead of time. I create sets, and this, I'll show you an example, but it's going to be more for college, but I've done this before as well for high schools as well. But I can make sets for a show, and then I can put those into the show and create all of the transitions later. So in this case, this was a college band. They were doing a Mission Impossible or a spy show or something. So before I even did the show, I did all of their signature sets. So they wanted the Impossible Missions Force logo. We had a thing where it was supposed to be a motorcycle guy that went and took off the ramp, and then it turned into something. So it was kind of a planned stage moment there. And then they had Rocky and Bullwinkle. So we made the Moose, and we made the thing. And so all these sets were a part of the show at one point or another. The Incredibles logo, you know, this type of thing. And then I would just copy and paste these into the drill as we got to them in the numbers, and we'd figure out, I'd figure out how to get them from one set to another. That was kind of my job. But creating all these things, especially if they wanted words or they wanted any of that type of thing in the show. And so all of these sets were at my disposal. I hide everybody over in the corner when I'm creating them. That's what you see here. And then I pull them out and create the sets. If there's a certain type of motion, like this was a follow the leader kind of around the form. I think my computer is super slow right now because I'm doing all this, but oh, there we go. So, just to make sure that the motion works and they can follow the leader around the form. And so by creating these, what I call signature sets first, is something that is really important. I just had a meeting with a band at TMEA a month ago, and we had some of the show music done, and I went through and I made signature sets for all the big hit moments in the music that we had so far. So here was 4 different versions of what the kids could be standing in while we do this 32 count hit or this 24 count hit. And, we'd say, well, do we like it symmetrical? Do we like it asymmetrical? Do we like it, more dense, or do we like it opened up? Do we want the color guard fully integrated, or do we want them all off to one side? We could have these different looks and talk about that and why we would want it a certain way. And the different staff members could kind of weigh in on, well, no, if we did it where all the color guard was here and everybody was around them, we could do this thing to really match the music. And that would be more effective for them to be in a small clump rather than spread out throughout the whole field, or vice versa. So thinking through those signature sets, those signature moments, those spots where you're going to be holding, and that it's an effect could be created by the actual staging and where people are, on the field, is really important. And I think it's important too for drill designers to understand. It helps them get into the band director's mind a little bit. I have some band directors that always want kind of a symphonic setup on the field. So no matter how things are, they still want the woodwinds to be able to be heard and to be in a position to add to the timbre, and so that they should never be behind the brass, this type of thing. It just kind of helps you. And I have others that don't mind. They said, put them anywhere, that's fine. But I have some that say, we don't need to put the low brass way up here, because then everything comes out of balance and we don't get the trumpets aren't putting their sound inside the tuba sound. And so it makes you really understand what the priority of the band director is. So when you see that sketch from them and it says, low brass here, high brass, woodwinds, this type of thing, you can understand and get into their head a little bit more. And thinking through those signature sets and those moments really will help your relationship and help give you a more tailored, tailored drill, more tailored production. You're on mute.
I did it twice. And as you've been saying all along, it's all about the communication, right? Talking, sharing ideas, sharing pictures, just having the communication, having the responses back and forth, letting everybody weigh in if appropriate, and doing this all early, not in the middle of the summer when it's too late. Planning the props and stuff ahead. Yeah, really great. All right, I'm loving this, everybody. If you have questions, throw them in. Joe, what's next?
Well, and you know, planning early is important, but early, it means something different to a lot of people. You know, I've have some people that want to plan in November for, you know, I mean, marching band just got done a week ago in October, you know, and they want to plan. And early for some folks is right now. And that's fine. It's all up to whatever the comfort level is, as long as you can get things ordered. That's the most important part. You know, because if you're going to do a lot of printing, a lot of silks, a lot of costuming, this type of thing, it's important that you get that stuff ordered early. But as far as the planning goes, you know, the majority of my clients are doing it right now, and I have some that I've already written drill for. Wow. So I'm, you know, kind of in a lot of different worlds as far as pacing for planning goes.
And just so everybody knows, in case you're watching this later, we are recording this on April 15th, 2025. So we're talking about in the middle of April as we're heading toward the end of the school year. My point, Joe, though, is you can't do what everybody used to do, which is school's out, I'm going to pick my music, maybe order some flag. Like, this is not the way great shows happen anymore. I want to encourage everybody. It takes more research, it takes more planning, map it out. Earlier is better. Okay. I know you got a few more things that I think are good.
I ask my clients to have all their stuff to me by June 1st. So it's important to have all that done before then. All right. So kind of one of my last things as we get into it, as we kind of wrap things up here, is I think it's really important for band directors and staff members especially, and this happens sometimes, but there are a lot of folks that I don't get any information on this, but you need to come up with some boundaries to give your drill designer to help you get the perfect product for your kids. Okay, so this can be as simple as letting them know the size of your practice field, like we just talked about. And if your drill designer doesn't ask you these questions in advance, then you're asking for trouble. But it's important for these things to be established. So if you don't have a full-size practice field, you can't properly plan visually for your show. If their drill designer doesn't know it and they're writing out to the 10s or out to the 15s on the football field, and you only have out to the 30s in your practice facility, that's going to be a big thing. So it's really important to set some limitations, some boundaries, and let that person know that to plan ahead, to make sure to chop that off in Pyware so that they don't write outside your actual boundaries. It's okay as well to set boundaries on marching versus holding. Who's playing the melody? I have some people that say if the melody is being played by a certain section, that section should be holding or should be moving forwards, not backwards. So they give me some really strict boundaries on making sure that the kids aren't put into a position where they're having to do something really, really hard while playing something very exposed or important. So those boundaries are important. In today's day and age of marching band, there's a lot of, if the people are playing the melody or if they have the most featured part, they're usually standing still. They should be framed or they should be integrated with the color guard in some fashion or picked up by a piece of equipment. So plan out those moments and put that in your storyboard. You can even come up with, other boundaries as well, like backwards marching step size. And I try my hardest to adhere to that. I do a pretty good job of it, I would say, but I do have some band directors that say, can you please limit backwards marching step size to around 12 to 5. 8 to 5 is is okay. We'd like to stick around 12 to 5. Smaller steps backwards would be better. Forwards up to 6 to 5 sometimes, because 6 to 5, depending on what you're playing, usually is, okay, as long as it's not maybe an entire movement at 6 to 5. So setting those boundaries for your drill writer is important. Talk about interval limits. It's okay to plan ahead and say, look, if there are color guard members on the field with flags, they should be 6 steps from everything else. That way they have a big cushion, to make mistakes, and they can use their eyes and guide and stay, within their boundaries so that no one gets hurt. It's important that the snare drums are at a 2-step interval, or 1.5, or whatever it might be. That the quads or the tenor drums don't go inside 2 steps. Like, they need to be at a 3 or a 4-step interval. Bass drums as well. And then talk to the drumline guys. Have them set the limitations. Sometimes I have, drumline guys, staff members, I should say, that want the bass drums behind the snares and the tenors at all times. No questions asked. To avoid one big long line of battery percussion. So those boundaries are really important to establish and can help me, especially on rewriting time, because sometimes this type of information, well, it used to, it doesn't anymore, because I ask these questions in my own planning for the show. But in years past, before I did any of this, I would write the show, or I'd write a movement, send it on. Hey guys, look at it. And then they'd come back. Well, we like to have our drum line stacked this way, and we like to have the color guard here. And that's kind of how I've come to understand all these things and ask it up front. So it's important and can save you a lot of headache getting your drill customized for what you like. And then, of course, I guess the very last thing along that would be also let your drill designer know what kind of labels and symbols do you like. Do you like dots on the page, X's? Do you like the flutes to all be F's with a number underneath it? Just little things that you as a teacher, as a band director, like about reading and communicating that drill chart to your students. It's okay to let your drill designer know that. And if you say, I'd like them all to be X's, and just number them 1 through 100, all the clarinets will be 1 through 16, and the flutes will be 17 through 28. I've had teachers do that. Other people like the letters, other people like the symbols to match, or the little instrument pictures, because it helps them quickly identify who's who and how they can help teach that drill to the band. So all of these things, all of this info, I guess, to say it's important to plan. And it's okay to let your drill designer know all of these things. It's not going to be overload for me. I will embrace it, and it will help me to make that tailored product for you.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I love about asking about the boundaries. And you're a better man than I am, Joe, because I write drill with letters, and that's the way I do it. So, sorry, everybody. You got to get used to that. I'm sorry. I guess I'm an old dog. I've been doing a lot of that. I can't keep track of everybody if I don't know the F's or the flutes. But anyway, I do want to say one thing. If you're watching this, I did a conversation recently with Michael Gaines about asking him questions about visual design, and everywhere you can find that. Go to my new YouTube channel called Call Me Beast and look for that for Michael Gaines, or look on social media from Marching Roundtable. You'll find it. But anyway, I asked him a question that was really interesting, and I actually asked the same question to Rick and Andrea, who are director of Paramount Winter Guard, right? And I asked them the same question, which is, it seems to me to be terrifying to have no boundaries, because like if you have a group, like he's Mark, he's going to write for Santa Clara, right? Okay, you have everything at your disposal. You have the best kids. There's the right number of them. They can all do anything you want to. He faces the same thing with Pride of Cincinnati, the Winter Guard that just won the championship yet again. And I said, like, how do you deal with that? And his answer was, you give yourself boundaries. And I thought that was so fascinating. So the designers who have everything then create boundaries for themselves. And if you haven't heard that conversation, or the one with Rick Subel and Andrea Forch from Paramount, you should watch those, because they discuss this. I asked them this specifically. For example, this year, Pride of Cincinnati, the Winter Guard, they created a circular floor, right? They just took that big rectangle, they put a big circle on it, and then they decided, okay, nobody's going to go outside the circle. And then all of a sudden, you have all these performers that are really close together, and this gives you a project and a problem to solve. And this was their approach when they started on the show. And like Rick Subel talked about, they created a certain kind of flag that went from one end of the pole to the other. It was really interesting. Like, okay, this is what we're going to play with. This is our idea. What does that do? What does that look like? You should watch those conversations. I know we're wrapping up, but we do have a question from someone that's watching, and it is the big question. And I actually think we might need to do a whole nother webinar, the conversation to discuss this, because Jose, hey, thanks for watching. He talks about he's a new designer, and one of the big struggles is transitions for color guard. How do you not make it look functional, or as I call it, the run for fabric, right? So this is a very long and involved thing. So should we even tackle it, or should we plan to do another time to talk about it? Well, do you want to address it at all tonight?
Yeah, I can tackle it. I think the biggest thing is that when you need to do a silk change or an equipment change, is your eye needs to be taken somewhere else where the equipment change isn't happening. That's usually a recipe for success. Or if they are transitioning near where the action is happening, that the work and you communicate to the color guard designer director that the way in which that they go to the new piece of equipment and come out with it needs to be choreographed. But for the most part, if you take your eye away from where the action is happening, everyone's looking over at side one while things happen on side two. That's a recipe for success. The other recipe for success is do not ever have them all go at the same time. It's very important to have a layered thing. So take every other person, they can come off, keep the other half out, and then they switch and come off and come out, or you ripple it off and ripple it back on, that type of thing. The more layering that you can add to any sort of transition, the better. And of course, if you can find ways to enhance the field, the setup, so that color guard don't actually have to run to get anywhere. Say they have prop flats along the back, or A-frames, or a stage here and a thing here, so that there are other places than the front and back sidelines or the side boundaries to get equipment. That can make things just so much nicer. And then, of course, like we said earlier in the webinar, there has to be counts built in for that. So when you're looking through your count sheet, you can't, you need to think, is 16 counts going to be enough? No, it's not. It's not going to be enough, especially if you expect the color guard to be well integrated into the show. Because if you're not leaving enough counts, then they're probably going to be along the frames, along the outside, because they only have 16 counts to go like this and come back out, But if there is some extended music and you have a well paced out opener, and you think, you're not trying to do too much, you can integrate them like crazy, and then over time have them come out and then layer back in, and you're all good. So has to be enough music, has to be enough counts. Never have them go at the same time. Take your eye away from the place where the transition is happening.
Holy cow, that was the best, most succinct answer to that. I can't believe how good that was. Like, all right, there was a little clinic. That was fantastic, Joe. I knew you were good, but that is amazing, because you hit all the points that I would want to make. So I loved that answer. That was fantastic. And by the way, Jose or whoever else might be dealing with this transition issue, I'll say this: color guard people tend to think like it's winter, and they expect that things can happen fast. And so part of your job, and I'll just say this to everybody, God bless them, you have to take time to explain to them everything takes so much longer to happen and to appear. And so you just sometimes, if you get a map from a color guard person and they want to have this change and this change of equipment, and then we're going to have something, you need to stop and explain to them, no, you get one change that are in a song maybe, and why, and get them on board for that. So there's some education that has to happen there. That is the bane of every guard drill writer experience with guard people, is that they don't understand that key concept, and we can make them understand, and then they just have to be creative in different ways. But I loved that answer. Okay, Joe, what do you want to say as we're wrapping this up?
To talk about what you just said, I remember a picture that my friend Wes he put on the Facebook, and it had a picture of a gym, like a basketball court, and then he put it right on the center X of a football field, and he went, it's a lot different. It's a lot different, right? The football field is much bigger than a gym. So it was just kind of a funny thing that you went, oh yeah, that's why it's different, because they have to go so much further to do everything. No, wrapping up, I like I said when we started, a lot of this information is pretty basic, and for a lot of folks probably watching today, maybe you learned a couple things here or there, but I think it's really important to visually plan your show. I think whether you're the band director or you're a drill designer or a color guard person or a drumline person who does maybe indoor and that's the type of thing, and you're into designing, it's important to map it out. Write it down. The amount of stuff that you can get onto paper, the amount of boundaries you can set to help your designer, whoever's putting those first dots on the field, to give them the mood, the style, the idea of what we're trying to convey to the audience, the better. And it will help you in turn teach that product once it's written, help rewrite if something isn't the way it should be, and then the more information that you can think ahead of time, the more success that your group is going to have. So if you really haven't done any of this yet, I suggest giving it a shot this fall. Make your spreadsheet and put it all down. If you'd like a template or something from me, you can just contact me at drilldesignsolutions@gmail.com. Drilldesignsolutions.com is my website. I have lots of resources there and can help you get your planning journey started.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, somebody in the comments asked if anybody does lessons on visual design, and you do that, Joe, don't you?
I do. I have I've done like one-on-one a little bit, but for the most part, people take my tutorial, which is at marchingartseducation.com, just to kind of get the basics of Pyware down. And then I have had several people that I mentor. So I do get a lot of people that will email me, and I'll say, send me some of your stuff. Just send me a file. Let's talk through it. Especially in the off season, it's really nice in December, January, February time when things are a little bit lighter. And I can say, oh yeah, and I'll look at it and I'll give them kind of a list of things that I would either change or do differently. Or if it's great, why it's great. And I'll try to, type that up too, give a lot of some glows and some grows, and then, help out mentor. So if you're interested in having a mentor or somebody that you'd like to look at your drill files, don't hesitate to drop me an email, drilldesignsolutions@gmail.com.
Yeah, and absolutely. And at marchingartseducation.com, his wonderful course about how it gives you tips on Pyware, tips on design, planning your stuff. All this is really, really helpful. So go there and find that. By the way, Joe, and as we're closing this, it reminded me, if you guys haven't seen it, go to the Marching Roundtable or on YouTube channel or on our website at marchingartseducation.com. I had a conversation last year with the staff of Santa Clara Vanguard about their summer show, and they made the decision not to have any set pieces or props of any kind. And this was a strategic choice. And then they had to figure out how to do guard transitions, and their solution was really ingenious and clever and surprising. And if you haven't seen that, everybody find that conversation, and they explain how they did that. It was because new equipment just came out of the air. It seemed, and it was absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
Joe,
One of the best moments in DCI last year, towards the end of their show, where that flag just comes out of nowhere.
Like comes out of nowhere, and they will tell you how they did it, and it was complicated, and they had to plan the hell out of that. So it's all about planning, everybody. Joe, you were wonderful, and you're so good at this. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Thanks everybody for watching, and keep looking at the website and our newsletter and to know what's coming up next. Appreciate it, everybody.